Welcome back to the Dungeon Master's Block, the place where we come to talk about the Dungeon Master, the most important person in the game. With every conversation, we hope to inspire as many as possible to keep on Dungeon Mastering.
And I'm one of your hosts, DM Neal, aka Joke Maniac.
And I'm one of your other hosts, DM Derek, aka How Not to DM.
And that's the last time you'll hear from Derek. No, I'm just kidding. Because he is not on this episode, except for the intro and the outro. But fear not, because it is another great episode. And this time around, we are going to have J. Tyler Pennington, an author of a series that I think every listener will enjoy. You could read it with your kids. You could read it on your own. But the topic we're going to talk about is epic endings, because there is nothing that is more kind of demoralizing, I feel like, as a DM than having your campaign end with a whimper rather than a bang.
Oof. I haven't heard the audio of this episode, but my current game is ending soon, and it remains to be seen which of those it's going to end as, so I will try my best. Hopefully I get some inspiration from this.
Well, perfect. Speaking of ways that campaigns end, last episode, Celeste and I talked about the concept of your game ending on a fiscal year, and I just want to take a moment to shout out to DM Brian, and apparently he does this exact thing. And it's such a great, it's such a funny concept, but in practice, it makes so much sense. Approaching it from that standpoint. So basically they play from February to November, and then it literally ending the sessions the week before Thanksgiving and using the time from then to February as the preseason. And you're literally re-hyping the campaign through that process. I also want to we're going to follow up on this email, Brian, if you haven't already received it or you haven't heard this, but we're following up because are you doing an end of the year report? This is the number of 20s that we rolled last year. This is the number of ones. There's so much interesting kind of off the wall fun stuff you could do. Also automatically baking in a break for you as the DM. I could literally probably do an entire episode on just this concept, but Brian, I just want a huge shout out for reaching out and letting us know that you, in fact, run your campaign on a D&D fiscal year.
I would love to have a group play consistently enough to keep a schedule like that. Alas, it is not my lot in life currently, but maybe someday I will get there because it does sound really nice. And on another note, we received an email from the founder of a website called FeedSpot, which is a kind of a database for RSS feeds, blogs, podcasts, etc. But the Dungeon Master's Block made the list of FeedSpot's top 15 Dungeon Master podcasts in no particular order. So it was a really big honor to be placed on that list, and Neal and I are really happy that you all continue to listen and support us and give us a reason to continue making this awesome show. And we hope that we keep encouraging all of you to keep on dungeon mastering.
Yeah, and as a quick aside, what FeedSpot does is basically you can curate your content. They are not paying us in any conceivable way to say these things. It's literally just me telling you about what the website does. And one of the things with as much content as is out there for you to consume, this is a way that you could potentially kind of curate your content to get a more Reader's Digest version and then dig in when you see something interesting.
Nice.
But speaking of something interesting, once again this year, I will be a Dungeon Master on the D20 cruise. And for those in the know, we will be sailing out of Orlando, Florida once again from April 14th to April 19th. And I happen to know, mainly because I'm on the Discord and see all the messages, that a lot of our premium passes, they've opened up some more. So if you're looking for a fun adventure that I feel like is a reasonable price and you want to have a great time while on a cruise, head over to event.cruises and you can find all the information there.
And last but not least, we've been teasing this for quite a while, Neal and I. We've been talking about doing a giveaway with some of these brand new 2024 5e books that Wizards has been giving us. But Neal and I have made the executive decision to, instead of doing 3 separate giveaways, combine these giveaways into one massive giveaway where we're giving away 2 sets of each of the 3 books: the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Monster's Manual, brand new, hot off the press from Wizards, to your door.
Yep, like we said, we realized that packaging them together so that we could set up whoever receives them for success, you're ready to go, everything you could need for your table. And if you listen to next week's episode, you'll find out how to join that giveaway.
Now, without further ado, let's head to the meat.
I'm starving. We ain't had nothing but maggoty bread for 3 stinking days.
Why can't we have some meat?
The plate meat's back on the menu, boys.
So today for the meet, we have a person who I have seen in person. I actually know how tall this person is, which is rare for me to say. But we have none other than J. Tyler Pennington, actor, author, and filmmaker. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And we met at a Catacon. So this is another shout out to a Catacon, a convention that historically has always punched above its weight. It is a great convention. It is the only reason I will ever go to Dayton, Ohio.
Perfectly fair. Ohio is.
Yeah. So, but if you are ever in that area or even remotely near that area, as longtime listeners will know, that is a convention you absolutely should go to. But with that out of the way, is there something that you can tell us about yourself that you think our listeners would be interested in?
As you said in my intro, I'm an actor and author and a filmmaker. So I do a little bit of everything. I like making short films. I made maybe $500-600 in about 4 years. So I'm very professional. Make silly short films, work on silly short films, write stuff, act in whatever I can. I've been everything from a corporate executive to a racist cop to a hitman to a melodramatic bad guy. Kind of fun.
I saw, because when I was looking up info to grab things beforehand, I was like, the whole IMDb page, and then I went through and just checked out some of your work. So, listener, do the same. And of course, this is a question we always need to ask: is there anything that you're currently working on that you can talk about?
Sure. Let's see here. Film wise, in my writers group, 2 other people are filmmakers as well. And we have filmed it already, a short film based on the Franz Kafka novel, The Castle. The basic premise is this guy, I think he's like a cartographer, comes to this old medieval town that's administered by a big castle. And they don't acknowledge that they hired him. And then he's kind of stuck inside of a limbo of he doesn't have the money, he does not have enough money to leave, but no one will acknowledge he exists. And so it's kind of a corporate hellscape. So we translated that into a modern corporate hellscape. So, a new young worker out of college comes to join the Castle Corporation and they don't know he exists. And then he gets stuck in the lobby and he goes kind of crazy.
It makes me think of Office Space.
It's kind of a,
if they move my desk one more time.
Yeah. And he slowly goes mad as people, kind of pseudo haze him, but not really.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then writing wise, I'm working on book 3 of my series, Harlock's Destiny. I am, how many words am I into it? Let's see here. Word count. I'm 4,510 words into it so far. Ugh.
Nice.
Yeah. It's a spy thriller, and it is proving very difficult to write because I thought I knew what a spy thriller was, and I found out I don't.
Wow.
So now I'm, plugging through.
Yeah. Learning as you go.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, listeners, we'll definitely get more into it, but
sure.
That is a book series that if you like D&D, it is an absolute must read, especially if you ask my daughter, who, by the way, gave me today's surprise question.
Ooh.
So if you found yourself in the game we'll get more into it. What would be your animal companion?
Ooh, that's tough. I'm a big fan of large cats, right? So they probably have to be like a tiger or a leopard or something like that. It's my jungle cat. Yeah.
I like it. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So we're there. I do feel remiss if we don't talk a little bit more about the series with Harlock.
Sure.
Because again, I feel like this is right up anyone's alley. So if you want to elevator pitch the 2
sure.
books, and of course the third that is 4,510 words on its way.
Yeah. Okay, so Harlock's Destiny is a lit RPG, so literary role-playing game. The basic premise is kind of like an isekai anime. The main character, Harlock, who's an ex-Special Forces mercenary, is transported to a medieval magical fantasy world with D&D-style game mechanics. So he becomes a rogue, gets a pet raccoon, goes on a fantasy adventure fighting goblins, skeletons, and vampires. And when it's all said and done, he owns a vineyard. And that's book 1. Then book 2 is the like shonen anime style tournament arc. So he goes to the Megan capital city, joins a team, fights for glory, and gets more. There's like the meta plot of the looming invasion. And so book 3, he's now a spy thriller, finding out who the bad guys are and trying to root out spies and moles and, hopefully not get killed by the people trying to kill him.
Yeah. Huge shout out to the complete opposite of the topic that we're going to address, but like, I love the way that book 1 starts in the sense that like we are experiencing and learning the world through the characters' eyes and actions. Like, and I think it is a really good example of a way that like, if you were introducing people either to D&D or your new homebrew world or a new campaign, like this is a really good example of a way to do that. That basically is like, yeah, come along here. I'll show you. Okay. And then part of me also wonders why I haven't tried more of the like isekai in terms of a campaign setting, or like you don't see it as much like in actual plays or things like that, which I think is really, I don't know. It's hitting on an interesting nerve. Like, I don't know that I'm going to go do it, but hopefully someone is compelled to do it after these words have been spoken.
Yeah, so there is sort of one of those. Dimension 20, I think it's the previous season, because they're on the recording one now. But the last one was called Never Stop Blowing Up. And it's about people who are, either work at or somehow involved with the last video recording or video rental store. And they all get isekai'd into an action adventure world, right? A movie called Never Stop Blowing Up. And they all take the one dude is Vic Ethanol. He is not Vin Diesel. He's Vic Ethanol. Right.
Nice. Yeah.
And then, there's like a Kingpin one, a John McClane one, the Vin Diesel one. There's a spy chick, a hacker. And I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, and then a James Bond character. And it is just, you want to watch a game turned up to 11. And like the last 3 episodes, I think it is, if they roll a nat 20, they get to be game master for 60 seconds.
Nice.
It goes as off this is a true story. Somebody faxes a stick of dynamite into space to be loaded into a cannon on a satellite mech made of cars to fire at the vampire president of the United States.
Yep. Friday.
Yeah.
That's what I call it, Friday.
That's a slow Tuesday for me.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, it's a wild show. I really recommend it.
Well, there we go. So, like I said, though, this is a perfect not segue because this is about starting a game, which is not what we're talking about. Because today we're going to talk about making epic endings to campaigns, like you said, like turning that to 11. Like what the set of words that you just put together. It is very likely that they were never said together at the same time until this moment. And I think that's kind of what we're striving towards. So like my first question to you is like, what drew you to like bring that topic as something that you were interested in discussing?
Some of my favorite games have, if not endings, dramatic twists that kind of like, towards the end, if you will. There like a few games have a big giant ending at the very end that kind of like changes the whole script. But a lot of games kind of, the ending is far, far different than what you would expect it would be because of kind of the crazy twist in it, if you will.
And I think there's something, and this is true of many of the podcasts, like certain things won't come to mind until now we're having this conversation, but there's a lot of media properties as well as like campaigns that I've been in where that ending that's it. Like,
oh yeah,
that final moment sits with you more. Because you think about like certain anime series where you're like, it was great until, or that ending was amazing. And you talk about the ending or something that fizzles out and you're so bummed. And this is very much so true with a D&D campaign where it's like that favorite show didn't get another season.
Right.
But they clearly didn't know that. So then it just tapers off and doesn't have that epic conclusion where it's the thing you always talk about. And the other is also true where you're like, you jumped every shark. You just decided at the end, just every shark available to you, you jumped it. There's a few series that come to mind where like, and that's my thing is like, there's still those moments that fill me full of hate. Where I think it was like season 3 of a show called Blind Spot, where basically woman has amnesia. She also has a head to toe bodysuit that basically has, like it's helping the FBI solve crimes.
Okay.
And like it had this just amazing conclusion at the end of season 3, but clearly they then found out they were going to get a season 4. So the main character is just off in the woods, living their own life. Another character shows up. And I still to this day don't understand what I'm supposed to have gotten from this, but they like connect something to her and find out that there is a second layer of tattoos that now can be seen with like UV light or something. And you're just like, oh no, I'm so sad. The other one I think of is Evangelion, where the creator was like, oh, you didn't enjoy that? How about an ending you enjoy even less?
Yeah. And you're like, I don't really know what was supposed to happen because am I the one that's having a psychotic break or what, you know?
Yeah. So there's a lot of series. And so I think that's important. And I think there's also like really specific scenarios where like we can set that up. And I think that's one of the other things is like, and I guess I'm already getting into question 2, but like, why should we strive for these like epic, over the top, you know, Spinal Tap to 11 kind of endings for either sessions or campaigns?
Sure.
And I think about like when I've ran games at conventions, why not strive for that every single time I'm at a convention? Because it's so unlikely that these people will ever play these characters.
Right. It's it's literally a one shot for the most part, you know, 1 or 2 shot, and that's it.
Yeah. And so what are some of the other reasons that you can think of as to like why to strive and try and set the dominoes up to fall in this direction?
So as a writer, I know a lot about storytelling, right? The like mechanics of it and kind of how it goes. You know, you have your 3-act structure, you set it up, you know, you have the rising tension and then the climax and then the resolution, right? So everyone kind of expects that. Like I was watching a show with my girlfriend. I was like, she's going to get hit by a car. And she's like, how do you know that? I was like, it sets it up perfectly, right? It's too good not to. And then lo and behold, 5 seconds later, she gets hit by a car. And so when you've watched enough movies and enough TV shows, you can kind of already guess how it's going to end. And you might not be, you know, you're 60, 70% correct, but you're kind of like, oh yeah, I figured that would happen, you know, or something like it. But then when they come out of the left field and they really like split the script and they do something just either crazy or, you know, they reframe things in a different way, whatever the case is, you go, holy crap. That makes so much sense. You know, whether it's the movie, which has like the spy movie with the twist at the end or something, you know, where you're like, oh, he was the good guy all along, or he was the bad guy all along. Then you kind of get, you know, that extra thing that you don't get much else at the time.
Yeah. And it's also tough to not go too far with that.
Oh, absolutely.
Not only were you distracted by the thing and stuff, but we also did all of these other things. You're like, okay, hold on. You're like, I had no concept. I didn't even have a chance to figure that out. That's a bit ridiculous. But I do feel that way with like seeing a lot of, like you said, reading a lot of, I guess it's just being engrossed in stories. I think it is the best framing device I could have. Are you reading it? Are you watching it? Are you writing it? Are you playing it? And so it's being engrossed in stories. And it is the number one reason why I stopped watching trailers, because I realized how much it ruins a movie.
Oh, it does. Yeah. I've watched movies that like you watch a trailer and you're like, oh, okay. And then something happens in the movie. You're like, oh, this is going to happen. I knew that. That's the twist. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So we're trying to set up these epic things, and I'm especially in the framing of like TTRPG. I think one of the most important things is it can't just be epic for you as the person running the game. I think there's so much buy-in that you're going to need to get to the, you know, over the top, that you really want the players to be involved with that process, or I don't think it's going to land the way you think it's going to land. So that's a really important thing. What I've noticed from, especially like the con games or like, longer cons is not what I mean. Grifting, but no, but like
conventions.
A game where you're running several sessions, but again, it's not your home game for the next 3 years. That's important too, though. And so like running those, like when I DM on the cruise, like it's 3 days. There's this final moment where It should be wish fulfillment. It should be everything that they've ever wanted and more, because again, the likelihood that this group of characters that ever sits down at a table is almost zero.
Right.
So I think playing off of what they want as much as what you want as the person running it is just as important.
As gamers are, they're all wildly different people. You know, you have your dudes who are like, I just want to have the biggest number, of damage possible, that I can. Other people are like, no, I want the most emotion. Other people want, an interesting story. Some people play along. I'm kind of I jump between, kind of playing along, or I like to touch the shiny. I'm a shiny touching person, so I cause a lot of problems. But, now put all those people together in one group and then try and make a crazy story that wraps up in an interesting way with 3, 4, 5, 6 wildly different personality types, makes it very difficult.
Yeah. So one of the ways that it's tough. One of the ways that I've found can work is having something that is so much more powerful than they are, and you're literally wish fulfilling. And so you're having a deity, and basically you're saying, okay, what is your one wish? What boon could I give to you? What thing do you want to happen? And then taking that and turning it up, because it's like, no, this is the direct thing they've told you. Now take it and make it more. Like, don't say yes, say absolutely. Also all these other things, like don't make a yes and just say absolutely plus all these other things.
You want that? Sure. Let's give you some more.
Yeah. So it is interesting to also think about like the times that I've failed at that, in terms of like not having those endings land. So we'll probably get into that in a little bit, but like, are there, since we're kind of working towards it, are there other times that you can think of like epic endings that you've gotten to?
So both are Cthulhu stories, right? Cthulhu role-playing game stories.
Yep.
And the first one, we're playing Horror on the Orient Express, the actual campaign.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Itself. And me and one other guy are the only two people that make it to the very end, because all the other characters, there's like 7 or 8 of us playing or something like that. And all the other people died. It was me and one dude. And we were both driven irrevocably insane at the very end. And it was, the whole thing's over, and the game master's like, you hear a train whistle in the distance, there's nowhere for a train to be. And earlier in the campaign, we had experienced something on the World Line train. We went to the space between dimensions, and it was this really epic scene. Then at the end, we were the only surviving characters, both of which had been on the train. And so, the train returns and we get on it, and kind of our characters go and beyond the scope of reality, if you will. So it's one of those things where it's like, oh, hey, everyone else had kind of a normal, you survived, good job. And then, he made it a little special for us because we had won the game, if you will. So that was a pretty cool ending, because, we didn't expect that. We're like, oh, cool. We defeated the bad guy and we got back home. And it's like, kind of an unexpected thing, a little wish fulfillment, but it was pretty fun.
I'm also trying to think of other times that I've been on the receiving end of an epic ending.
Yeah.
And it's rare because I run the game most of the time. So I'm trying to think, but what I also know is, and it just got mentioned in a previous episode, this will probably be a few episodes later. But I can give more context for it, where I usually try and find a player, and I'm choosing them to do the next arc. Okay, so what is their backstory? And it doesn't have to be all about them, but in the same way, if it's clear that they're more prominent in the story for this coming arc. And so one player, basically they were a barbarian from the frozen north, and they things were just leading in that direction. Mm-hmm. That's also when they start to divulge that their backstory is, things happened and they blamed me, and I am really not supposed to go back at all, because the white tiger companion that I have was actually someone else's, but then it was meant for me. So it's bad news up there.
Sure.
But then they're figuring out all the things and having this epic conclusion of battling this enormous frost giant. I have a miniature that's almost a foot tall that I painted. I had terrain. I brought the whole thing out. They fought it. A couple of them go down. They don't die. it all wraps up, and it was such an epic conclusion that like the epilogue that comes out of that is their character or the player realizes the character won't go back to adventuring.
Oh, okay. Kind of into their story.
Yeah, like this is I need to be here to help my people thrive once again after the devastation that we've that we basically stopped.
Right.
And so the idea of having arcs that kind of conclude is also an interesting thing, of like having those moments. And those are also great moments I have found, is like if you feel that, if you're trying to feel that and harness it and say, is this a time that we could stop?
Sure.
Like I usually try and offer that up of like, well, do you want to stay here or do you want to go somewhere else? I'm good with either. But like, I really want to present that. Like I'm trying to see if I'm getting, renewed for another season in that context, I guess.
Right. Well, knowing when to stop is very important, right? Cause you can drag a game on, or you're like, why are we playing this? We just keep, it's like you had this cool story and you did the story arc and everybody had their comeuppance, and it's like, well, what do we do now? Well, we just keep playing. Like, why? Stories need an end. And so it's important to do that. And, it's rewarding when certain characters get kind of a, nice conclusion to their story, their personal story.
Yeah. Knowing, I guess it's a good context to ask you, knowing that both the two books that are out are not the same size. I guess that's also an interesting thing to ask, is like, when do you, like, obviously you're letting the story be what it needs to be and be the length you feel that it needs to be. But like, what is kind of like your markers for something that would tell you, okay, this story is wrapping up?
Well, a basic premise is I have an outline, if you will, right? And so I know how the story begins, kind of the high points, certain things that happen in the middle, and then what the end will be. And so I try not to limit myself to where, what the distance between start and finish is. I just write. And then when I get to that point, I stop. And so for book 2 specifically, it's like 136,000 words long, something like that. I got to like 100,000 words. It's like, it's going to be like 10,000 more. And then I wrote 10,000. It'll be 10,000 more. It'll be 10,000 more, because the story just kept going. Oh, I need to do more stuff to get from here to there, because, it just needed that. It's kind of hard to describe. It's like, these characters need to do more stuff. I need to explain more of that. I need to visit this thing. And 136,000 words later, I get to the end.
Yeah. It's interesting to think of how much all of that could be said of almost any D&D campaign.
Oh, sure.
You're approaching, like having an idea of where your ending is, having your setup and where you need to be, but like the length between those, being able to either say, yeah, we need to be there sooner, or no, we need to hold that off, or going back and forth between the two and figuring out like, and like you said, like there is no way you're getting to an epic conclusion if no one's having fun at that time.
Right. And yeah, pacing is very important. Like with a book, I know what the characters are going to do, and I can make them do anything I want because I'm writing the story. But in a, D&D campaign or whatever, it's you have to be like, okay, Bob the Barbarian, we need to go from point A to point B now. We've killed all the monsters. Let's shoo you along, because some players will just, they'll just kind of get stuck and, we have to save the town. It's like, the town doesn't need saving. Let's go to the plot. Let's do the plot, not go run another dungeon. Well, we want to run a dungeon. Okay, we can run dungeons in the next part of the story, when we go to the next town and solve the next problem or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And helping things along. I'm trying to, and those it's like you're saying those dominoes, and like you're probably being given more dominoes, if you just keep with the analogy, but like you're probably being given more dominoes than you expect as you're going through, to the point where you also may not recognize that you're getting them. And I think it's like, that's the thing that I was very, very bad at for a very long time. I am still bad at it, which is better than very, very bad, I suppose. But like, I don't take a lot of notes during the session.
Yeah, I'm bad about that too. Yeah.
And I can't decide how I feel about that really at the end of it all, because I would rather be more engaged with the session as it's happening and try and write notes after is what I've started to do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I hate stopping to write notes or like trying to find those moments to write notes. And I feel like it pulls me out of the moments a lot more. So I try and be better prepared and then try and remember things after the fact. But that's to say, like, I think I'll miss things. And so, especially with the like TTRPG stuff, like having those follow-up conversations, which I feel like is also a thing that, people don't do enough.
Yeah. We in my group, we don't really do that, but we did one where we had, what was it? Obsidian Portal. You remember that website?
Yep.
Yeah. So we played, long time ago, 7th Sea, which if you haven't played is very fun. It's like a swashbuckling alternate medieval Europe. And we had our campaign there, and every session we would go on and we had an entry for our character and we would describe what we thought was going on. And it was super cool to see like what the other characters thought was happening, because, you know, your experience of the same thing is going to be different from my experience. Right. And so, you know, how different people interpret stuff. And like one character thought that I was, I don't remember now, but it was like he had a wildly like left field theory of what was going on with me. And I was like, that's not at all what I thought. You know, I thought this was like something else. And you met a character who was going to be this other guy, and all this crazy stuff was happening because he thought something else than anybody else did. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
That gets me into a really interesting like existential theory that I have, that technically all of us are living alternate realities because we're all interpreting the world differently, and we don't have to deal with that. We can move on. I'll just let that lie, and whoever wants to.
I'll not go to sleep tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. You know what's even okay? No, we'll play with it a little bit. Because I think it is important. Be in the sense that like you're trying to land this plane for everyone.
Sure.
In the sense that, you know, that's the whole key about landing a plane is everyone makes it.
Right.
So like if you're trying to have this epic conclusion to whatever part of your story, to like have that moment where people talk about it, people think about it, it's the session that everyone goes back to 10 years down the road. One of the important things is, like you said, everyone is seeing it differently. You have to start to think about like, what does that mean for the individual players? My context for this, like everyone's living in an alternate reality, is like I have some red-green color blindness. So
sure.
The way I literally see the world is different. And like the degree that I have it is also not necessarily as far as like some other people. So even people with the same thing going on, even there is variance in between those. And then if I also think about someone that has issues with numbers, or isn't as auditory as some others, like does writing like a session notes, would that be more helpful for them to process what happened after the fact, or having the tactile nature of digital dice versus physical dice, and so there's a lot of things, like a lot of factors to keep tossing into this mix. Cause again, and we won't have the answers. Sorry. But we can have a lot of questions that you can hopefully ask, listener, to figure out what some of those answers are for you.
Yeah. Like, was it like a significant portion of the population doesn't have an internal monologue?
Mm-hmm.
Like that blew my mind. I was like, what? People don't hear. They're like, you know, I'm thinking to myself all the time, I could do this, I could do that, you know, have a little conversation with myself, trying to figure something out. And there are people who don't do that. That's a completely different worldview. You know what I mean? Like that blows my mind.
Yeah. Or someone's ability to, the way they imagine something. So there are people that are not capable of like having a picture in their head.
Yeah.
And so, and like to the degree of basically on that spectrum of can I or can't I, to the 1 degree is literally no, I cannot.
Yeah.
If I say there is a red ball floating in the middle of a pristine lake,
they don't know what that looks like.
Yeah. And a person like contextually understands all of the words that I've said, but an image is not appearing in their head. Then you have someone else that's on the other side.
Yeah.
who has basically can see the lake and is contextualizing to the point where like they're there, they are there in their mind.
They're living the dream, literally.
Yeah, and they can see it, and so there's something to also be said about this. Is it? I feel like we're setting up a really weird questionnaire for DMs to ask their players to like get a better vibe.
Internal monologues. Can you picture things in your head? You know, like,
when I say this, what do you think? If this, then that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it is important to also kind of figure out, as always, and just another aspect of figuring out like where your players are, because it could be a way that you reframe the descriptions that you have. I think, and this is, again, long-time listeners will know we would have Morgan Jenkins on, and for a time they were running a podcast called Going In Blind, where all of the players were heavily vision impaired.
Okay.
And so that changes. Everything about the way you're approaching how you're talking about things, because you don't. Sure, you could have minis and maps and stuff, but that's more for you than it is for them. And you just try and avoid saying, well, if you look over here, because it's not going to do a lot of good.
Yeah. Because you can't look. You don't can't see. Yeah. Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. So figuring out those different things, because again, all of this is leading towards what is the most impactful way that I could present this final thing, because you and I could both, go watch a movie and you think, that was it. This was amazing. This was like my epic ending to a movie. And I could be like, this was hot garbage. And I did not enjoy it.
Slight hot take. I feel that way about Wicked. I have a friend who just loves it up and down. And I'm like, I did not enjoy that. The choreography and the sets on point. The singing, pretty good. The storyline, I was just like, oh my God, it's so bad. And my friend's like, it's the best movie ever. And I'm one side, he's the other. And it's really funny trying to like, why do you like it? And it's like all the things he likes, I don't like. Yep. And all the things I don't like, he likes. It's just completely opposite sides of the street. Yeah, it's so weird.
Yeah, and figuring out like how to make that something that works for both people, especially if they're sitting at the table. Because I mean, there is more buy-in when someone is at the table. And I think that's kind of what we've alluded to throughout this conversation, is that like constantly trying to have the players buy back in, because that's what's going to make it land at the end of all of this.
Well, like, when you start a campaign session, unless you write your characters to all be friends, you're strangers. Well, why are strangers getting together and fighting monsters? It's like, hello, sir, we've just met. I trust you with my life. The standard kind of comedy thing where you're like, oh yeah, well, let's team up and go fight things. Okay, well, each character has a different story. Are they going to have conflict between the characters? Well, you don't really want that in a game, because then I like you in real life, but our characters don't like each other, so we have to be mean to each other. And so, you got to balance characters, players, the story, the buy-in, like you said, because it's, well, in this point in time, my character would just quit. Like your barbarian friend who would just go, my story's done. Well, do you want that to happen? Do you not want that to happen? It's a lot of things to handle in a story.
And I think it's interesting how much this ties back to either books or series or things like that. Because what I realize is like, if you're not getting renewed for another season, that changes the way you can end it. You could kill them all.
Yeah.
You could have them all transport backwards or forwards in time. They could go to a different dimension. Everything's back on the table if this is the end of this campaign. This is the end, not just of this art. This isn't the end of the season. This is the series finale. And you're really just going to end it. And it's okay, because you can still have threads that you pull back. Because what series doesn't get a movie after the fact, or a comic book, or a novel, or. So there's nothing that can't be undone. It's D&D. It's magic. Come on. We can do anything we want. Making it work is a whole nother story, but having the ability to do it is always there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
So yeah, what do you have any other see, I always think about stories where everyone dies, and my ultimate desire to have the afterlife be broken and bring them all back, and they have to fight their way back through it. I have heard of it before, where everyone dies and they all rip up their character sheets. But what they didn't know is the DM grabbed all the like ripped up pieces and put them back together.
Ooh,
and then
that's cool.
Go to start another campaign, or there's like a different point like down the road and they hand them back their ripped up, now repaired character sheets.
Yeah, we in that other Cthulhu game, the Horror on the Orient Express, like several people died, but it wasn't like a party wipe, right? It was like, oh, Bob got killed off, Susan got killed off, Jim got killed off, and then they made new characters and came back because they're people on the train or whatever. But yeah, I don't think we've ever played one where everybody died. There was one we were playing the Pokemon fan RPG, fan made RPG.
Oh yeah,
super good. You need a spreadsheet to play it. It's a little tough, but other than that, great. And it's like, I don't remember. This has been years ago, probably like before the pandemic, during the pandemic. Anyways, 3-4 years ago, and we don't die, but like the world ends and gets remade, kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
And our characters like become aspects in some manner of way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have had one conclude where we did all go back in time to basically prevent the bad thing that has. So speaking of Eberron, like went back in time and prevented the war from ever happening. But then that's where we're stuck because we prevented the war from ever happening. Not trying to address like, is it an alternate timeline? No. This is just what our characters chose to do in this story. And so went back in time. And that was an interesting one because like, it was higher level, and I had recently sacrificed my paladin powers to have something happen.
Oh no!
And it was like this really specific build where it was called a Satadin, and I've mentioned it before on the podcast, but a Satadin single attribute dependent, where it was all charisma, so it was a paladin and a hexblade warlock put together. So I lost my paladin powers, but then we traveled back in time so far that I lost my patron because they didn't exist yet. And I'm like, I think I'm just a guy.
I think I'm just a dude now.
I'm a fighter. But then it was also telling those stories of like, what did we do? Like because you have, all of this knowledge of things that could be, and like, what do you do to like rebuild the world without having the war happen?
Huh.
And so, so there's a lot of ways, especially I think one of the other things is leading up to it, but also through it. And then out on the tail end is like the players need to have their stamp on this ending to make it feel epic, just as much as I would, running the game and like having them be as involved.
Yeah. And like with characters and telling a story in like a role-playing game is you kind of have that one character who is like your lead character, right? And who, kind of drives the story. You might have one or two of them. Usually it's one person. And so, it's very easy to get like focused on them, and then everyone else is a side character, a sidekick or whatever. And, then that it might be fun for the the main character, but then the side character is like, well, I want to do stuff. Oh, sorry. We just spent 40 minutes role playing with Bob,
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's cool for Bob, but I haven't done anything for an hour. I've been sitting here. I'm bored,
Yeah. I've seen it before, certainly, where it's like you have the entire campaign where it is focused on them. And I think it's like, I've been in those campaigns. And so I think it's maybe why, like, I lean towards, no, you're important for this arc. The overall campaign is about the party, but you can be important for the arc that we're on.
Yeah.
Rather than, because there was one where it was like, basically they were like the penultimate, like, if it's the anime, they're the one that's going to constantly get all the power. They're the one that everyone's looking for. They're the one that everyone's hunting for. They're like, it's them. And what I realized is you have two options, and this will definitely not allow for these epic endings. Is either you're going to have someone try way too hard to get the spotlight, or somebody else try not at all.
Right.
Because they realize it's not being shared. And so like either knowing or unknowing, you're going to have, I can think of the player who tried way too hard. And like, I'm the player that's not going to try hard enough because I'm too happy just not to be running. So like I've said many times before, I am almost an NPC if I'm a player because I'm just like, this is great.
Yeah. Cool. What do you want me to do? Yeah.
What are you doing? Nothing. Just hanging out. If you need anything, I'll be right over here. Just whenever. Just tell me when it's my turn, and I'm happy to roll some dice. So I know where I fall in that. But yeah, like having the spotlight too much, I think would be, because then how do you not end it but have all the spotlight be on them?
I think it was Brennan Lee Mulligan from Dimension 20 was saying how he asked, because he's big time D&D player. He's played for years and years and years, and is kind of a celebrity in the circles. And so when he's playing in a game, he asked the DM, he goes, "What kind of story do you want to tell, and how can I help you tell it?" Right? He's an active participant, but he doesn't want to I want to do the things I want to do, right? And then that's a disruption to the game, because it's like, well, we're playing like this kind of game, and you want to play it this way, and it doesn't really match, because this isn't a dungeon crawl. This is more of a role-playing session. Well, he goes, "What do you want me to do to help you? Do you want me to be like, a passive character, a more active character, a little bit in between? You kind of let me know how you want me to play, and it will make the experience better for everybody involved, not just, one person or two people or whatever."
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that, because even as a player, like if I could help engage another player that otherwise wasn't being engaged,
sure,
that's probably the only times I'm going to start stepping into the game as much. But if it's literally everyone is already doing that, I will be the last person to do that, by far and away. So the other thing that we're starting to round out towards is what I believe is my favorite section of all time, and it is our air quote homework section.
Ooh.
So what are some things that, I guess we've already talked about some bad examples. We've talked about some good examples, but what are some other pieces of media that the listeners could go experience that, read, watch, engage with, that are good examples of these epic endings?
So,
I don't know if you've heard about Harlock's Destiny. No.
Yeah. There's this fantastic series of books. There's only two now. Apparently, the author's very new in the first one. Yeah, they're amazing.
Yep. Yes.
But I have a little handy dandy list right here of video games that are wild endings. So I don't want to give away anything too much, but it's like the game came out. It was like $8 on the Microsoft Store years and years ago. It's called Braid. It's a side scroller game. You ever hear of it? Yeah, it's one dude made it with he paid a guy to do artwork or something.
Oh, okay.
But you're a character essentially trying to rescue a princess, kind of. It's a wild game, and it has one of the best endings of a video game ever. You're like, holy crap, right? It's one of those kind of moments. It's a third person shooter called Spec Ops: The Line.
Okay. Yep.
It's a little bit of a long game. You're essentially special forces in, I think, Dubai. Dubai's been overtaken by a rogue general, and yeah, when you end that game, it completely reframes everything, and it's kind of a shock. You're like, oh, well, that changes everything, kind of deal. There's Soma. It's kind of a first person game where you're under the water in a undersea lab, and the world has ended, and you're trying to survive and get onto a rocket to go to space to live in essentially a space habitat. But you're not you; you're a brain backup of you. And it's it's a 2000s era, 2010 era game or something. Look it up. Soma. Soma. Okay. It has one of the most
I'm writing a few of these down.
Yeah, it's got one of the most it's one of my favorite endings of a game ever. Yeah, it's a absolutely wild ending. It's one of those. It's good. It's real good. Yeah, so that'd be video games. You want to hear good storytelling of how to flip the script, and just in the most brilliant of ways. Braid, Spec Ops: The Line, and Soma. Fantastic games. Trying to think books I've read that's got crazy endings. Fight Club. That's a fantastic book, fantastic movie. Yep. I didn't know this recently. We have a new hire in my department. He's let me read Fight Club 2 and 3. They're comic books.
Oh wow! Okay.
And they're interesting. I wouldn't say that they have good weird endings, flipped, crazy endings, but they're crazy endings. Interesting if you like them. If you like the first Fight Club, something to read. What is the TV show that has a crazy?
Okay, so a couple TV shows.
Yeah.
So the Good Place.
Oh yeah.
So that's one of the ones where it's it was a really good show all the way along, and they managed to have an ending that is both satisfying and surprising, which is
Sure.
hard. It's hard because sometimes it's satisfying because it's the thing you like.
Yeah.
A vast majority of shows will end with a wedding because it is a conclusion of a story that you've been wanting potentially the entire time.
Right.
But this is like, yeah, definitely subverts your expectations as well as does it in a really good way. The other one is Breaking Bad.
Dude, Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
That is a wild show. It's God, so good.
Yeah. I don't think I've had more like WTF moments at the end of episodes because I was watching it as it was coming out.
Sure.
And so then it would just be like blam. And then gotta wait a week and you're just like, but why? No, thank you. So yeah, just having people watch that, like binge watch that just feels wild conceptually as someone that watched it week to week.
Yeah. You ever watch Lost?
Yes.
Yeah. So that show, it got hot take. It gets bad last, I think 2 seasons kind of suck because from what I understand, they were writing it kind of by the seat of their pants and they didn't think they were going to get renewed. And then they kept getting renewed and they're like, oh my God, what do we do? But my girlfriend and I have been rewatching it and the season ending of season 1, you're just like, holy crap. And then the opening of season 2, you're like, oh my God. Like it's a crazy back to back. We had to watch like the first 3 episodes of season 2 because they all go kind of back to back. And we're up like real late watching these, like, what is happening next? Just a wild show, start to finish, Jeez.
Another one that I hadn't thought of, but this is a good way to look at it from arcs, not campaigns.
Sure.
Is the 2 Infinity War movies. Because it really did take that whole thing, the Infinity Saga, as Marvel coins it, and buttons that thing up in a way that is like, people are cheering and crying in this theater as they're like, as you hear on your left.
Dude, that was the hypest moment.
But that story continues and people are not as big a fan as what is happening. But part of it also comes to the idea, part of not enjoying it is how conclusive and epic that ending felt to the Infinity Saga. And like, that is always your reference point forevermore, is to look back to that. And so it's difficult. And that's kind of like we mentioned before, is like this series that gets another season, another season, or the game that gets another dungeon, another arc, those kind of things.
Yeah. Because, endings are good. Stories need to end. There's books I know about that go 12, 13 books, and you're like, stop, please. You know what I mean? The lit RPG genre, which, not to talk bad about anybody in specific, but there are series that, people have criticized. I've not read any of them, but criticized. Like, they just kind of keep going, It's, there's one that's like, like 1,000 chapters long or something like that. It just stuff keeps happening. And, the story keeps continuing, but when is it going to stop? Because, like in D&D campaigns, okay, you're level 20. What do you do now? Well, we want to keep playing. Okay, well, there's nowhere to go other than you just keep fighting bigger, more powerful monsters. There's no growth, if you will. The storyline is concluded. Like with my best-selling series, Warlock's Destiny.
Nice.
I have plans for 5 books in the first arc, but I don't know how many for the second arc. But the second arc will be the ending. I have it all, the ending planned out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it has an end. Will it be 8 books? Will it be 7? I don't know, but there will be an end to it. And again, it may not be a good ending, but it will be an ending, and that's something in and of itself.
Yeah. Getting to that point. One that'd be like a lot tougher to watch now because I love the show so much, and having certain characters that, the actors are no longer with us. Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Dude, Holt.
Yeah.
Captain Holt was just, he was the best character on that show.
To perfection.
Dude, he couldn't have been a better character.
Perfection.
Yeah.
Another one that's like, it was one of the most viewed things of all time. The MASH finale.
The MASH finale, yeah, where the wasn't the commanding officer's plane crashes or helicopter crashes or something.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah, and then they also have the rocks that spell out goodbye.
Yep,
that's
Yep.
Well, Well, there we go. So I think we've done it. But what the other thing that is very important that I ask you is where
Sure.
can people go to find all the things that you are doing on this World Wide Web?
So you can find me on Facebook. Search J, like the letter J, space Tyler, space Pennington, J Tyler Pennington. Find my Facebook page. You can find me on Amazon. It's the same. You can search for Harlock's Destiny or J Tyler Pennington. On Amazon, if you go to one of the books, you can scroll down and you can follow me. And then anytime I release a book, you'll get an email. I have film projects, but they're all over the place because I've done stuff for all kinds of people all across. So there's not really one place you can find me. But if you look on IMDb, J. Tyler Pennington, you can find the names of all the things I've done.
Perfect. And we'll have links to all that in the show notes. I always point down like you're going to see me doing it, but you won't because we don't have video. But imagine right there. Like and subscribe. It's like we're on YouTube, but we're not.
Sure.
So, but as always, thanks for coming on, spending some time with us. And of course, if nothing else, I'll see you in person at a Catacon next year.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Glad to see you again. And yeah, hopefully I'll be there next year and you will too.
We just wanted to thank J. Tyler Pennington again for coming on, spending some time with us, talking about epic endings, and hopefully Derek has now listened, and now he knows everything. He didn't yet. That's how recording the intro and outro goes. Ha ha!
No, I definitely have heard all of that because I was sitting here listening with you, dear listener, and now I know everything you know, and I am so ready to go end that campaign.
What a wild way for us to record the intro and outro if that's what really happened.
We just sit here staring at each other listening. No.
I would have to listen to me for 40 minutes.
Yeah, it would be great. As always, if you want to get in touch with us and ask us any questions about the show, ask us questions about running games, or tell us how awesome you think Neal's beard looks, you can email us at dungeonmasterblock@gmail.com.
And of course, if you enjoyed this episode or any of the other ones you've listened to, and you see fit, head over to your podcatcher of choice and leave us a rating and review. Word on the street is it's a wonderful thing to do. And of course, if you head over to social media of your choice, today's social media that popped up, no, I'm kidding. There's probably one though. You can always search for us at DMS_block or just type in Dungeon Masters Block and I'm sure we'll pop up.
The Dungeon Masters Block is a proud member of the Block Party Podcast Network. Go and listen to some of our friends' shows who have recently joined us on the network, like The Bad Venture Club, Titans of Altera, Knocked Prone, Dungeons and Dragons and Daughters, the old How Not to DM episodes, which are still live, and more.
And as always, we want to thank you, the listener, for listening to the Dungeon Masters Block, the place where we come to talk about the Dungeon Master, the most important person in the game, the only person capable of playing gods,
killing characters,
and lowering the eagles. Nah, the eagles flew. Fly, eagles, fly. Of all the people at the table.
Oh, man. I'm DM Derek. Go Birds.
I'm DM Neal. Good night, good luck, and keep on dungeon mastering.
It's not inspiration, it's not wisdom, and it's bad advice.
If you feel like you want to end your campaign soon and you want an epic ending, kill him.
Goodbye.